What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at Once Upon a Time in America, directed by Sergio Leone. Once Upon a Time in America tells the story of Noodles and Max, who are pretty much co-leaders of a gang of Jewish ghetto youths as they rise to prominence in America from 1918 to 1933. So, yeah, that's the overall basic premise of Once Upon a Time in America, so let's talk about it. I'm going to try and make this review as short as I can because this movie is loaded with a lot of stuff. I'm going to be reviewing the extended cut, which runs well over 4 hours. Yeah. This movie, there's going to be a lot to unpack, so I'm going to try and make this review as short and sweet as I possibly can. My overall thoughts when it comes to this movie, I've only seen it once. And not, like I'm legitimately recording this review after having my very first viewing of this movie, and I can honestly say that I thought it was really good. You can really feel the 4 hour runtime while watching this movie. This movie does have moments where it kind of drags its feet a little bit, and since I watched the extended cut, there's legitimately footage that was inserted into this movie where I can understand why they took it out because it doesn't really add anything to the overall plot of the movie. It's just there for a complete experience, I guess. But even the scenes that were not even the regular scenes that are in this movie, it still pads the runtime a little bit, and just a little bit of trimming would have done this movie justice. I think if you would have trimmed the right areas and trimmed out mostly just fluffy stuff that you really didn't need, this movie could have had a much more tighter run, could have had a much more tighter pace, and that just feels so bogged down by just a lot of stuff that you really just don't need. Uh, so that's my main criticism. My main criticism is that this movie does suffer from some pacing issues, for me at least. You know, you can really feel the 4 hour runtime in this movie. You can really feel that there are certain scenes that this scene could be taken out. You're not going to really miss anything. That scene could be taken out. You're not going to really miss anything. This should be trimmed down a little bit. You're not going to miss anything. There are several scenes that involve rape that you clearly could have trimmed down easily, and because that stuff is just really miserable and hard to watch. And Sergio Leone made you feel very uncomfortable while watching those rape scenes. I'll tell you that. Yeah, those could have easily been trimmed down. Like I get those scenes could have easily been trimmed down and just yeah, would have again. I think the movie would have been all better for it. Uh, so yeah, pacing issues for me is one of the main problems of this film. But other than that, I thought this movie was really good. Once Upon a Time in America is considered to be one of the greatest gangster movies ever made. I'm not gonna go that far for my personal taste. I've seen gangster movies that I feel are much better than this. But in terms of having this epic scope, I thought Sergio Leone really did a fantastic job at just making me feel the epicness of this movie. This movie is divided into two halves. This movie's divided. This movie's divided in the 1918 section, which follows the youth as children, and the 1930s section, which sees them as adults making money during the Prohibition era. And then you have everything else that's peppered throughout in between. But let's go section by section. First off, the stuff with 1918, with the kids first meeting one another and forming their group. I thought this section of the movie was really well done. I thought the young actors who played the characters did a really good job at capturing the mannerisms as their adult counterparts. I thought the chemistry between the young cast worked really well. The young kids who played Noodles and Max, I thought had really good on-screen chemistry with one another. And not only that, I just like the whole aesthetic feel of the 1918s. You know, I am a sucker for movies that go back in time, like period piece movies that go back to pretty much the dawn of American civilization. And in that late 1910s, 1920s era has always been really fascinating to me because it really does look like a simple time, and it really does, in a sense, look like a time where, you know, it looks like it's a time where it's pretty much going back to the primitive. And I thought Sergio Leone did a fantastic job at recreating that 1918, that 1910s, 1920s feel with this section of the movie. I like the relationships that are developed throughout this section. I like the whole thing of Noodles developing this romance for this character named Deborah, who was played by a very young Jennifer Connelly, which gets expanded upon when we get to the adult section of the film, for better or worse, I should say. For better or worse. But in this, I thought the young romance was really handled very, very well. I like the whole thing of the four friends forming their own gang and then going into a rival with another gang led by a guy called Bugsy, which actually leads to the death of one of the Jewish gang members who, and because of this, Noodles kills the other guy and then wounds a cop, which puts him in jail. And this is what flashes us forward to the 1933 section of the movie, where the gang gets reunited during the Prohibition era and they start to make some really good money. And this is where the heavy hitters come in. This is the section where we get De Niro, James Woods, William Forsythe, Treat Williams, Joe Pesci, Burt Young, and all these well-seasoned, fantastic actors. And in the roles that they were in, they were fantastic. I thought De Niro as older Needles. I thought he was fantastic in this movie. He played the role really, really well. James Woods as Max, I liked him in this movie as well. De Niro and Woods have outstanding chemistry, and you can buy that the young kids playing them in the 1918 section grew up to be those characters. It's almost as if the chemistry of the young actors transferred to De Niro and Woods, because that's just how flawless and just seamless it felt. It's great, and they're just two seasoned actors who are fantastic in general. You know, James Woods to me has always been criminally underrated, along with Treat Williams, who is in this movie, who plays a union leader named Jimmy Conway. I think Treat Williams overall in this film is kind of underutilized in a lot of areas, because I think Treat Williams should have got a little bit more screen time. Same with Joe Pesci, who plays a mob boss that wants to that the Jewish guys work for. Joe Pesci's role is very, very brief, very, very small. I would have liked to see more scenes with him. That's just me personally. But the scenes that we did get with Williams and Pesci, I enjoyed it. But the 1930 section is pretty much just about Noodles and Max just having their friendship slowly start to deteriorate to the point where Max gets this idea to want to rob the Federal Reserve once Prohibition ends, and he ends up faking his own death while the rest of the crew get killed pretty much, and this leaves Noodles living a life of regret, and which also plays into the present day scenes that take place in 1968, where we see Noodles as an older gentleman just recounting, his days as a youth with the gang and everything like that. And I thought De Niro did a great job at playing the younger version of Noodles and the much, much older version of Noodles as an old man in his 60s. De Niro's performance all around is fantastic. James Woods, same thing, playing the adult version and then the older version of Max, who after he fakes his own death, takes the guise of a prominent secretary named Bailey. I thought James Woods did a fantastic job with that stuff as well. I thought the age makeup, for the most part, looked good. On some actors, it looked good, and then other actors, it's like, you're not even trying at this point. Like the biggest one being Elizabeth Mcgovern, who plays older Deborah. There are certain, there's when we see older Deborah, when Max revisits her after the history that they had in the 1930s with Max pretty much raping her, and then they meet again. It's almost as if she did not age a day in 30 years. Like, she still looks like the same. 60-year-old women don't age that well. Do a better job with the makeup department on that one. But the overall scene of the reunion is actually really intense and beautifully written and tightly paced. And I like all that stuff. I even like the ending where Noodles meets Bailey for the first time, and he just refuses to acknowledge Bailey as Max, because in Noodles' mind, Max died the night their crew died, and Bailey's a completely different person. So I liked all that stuff too, and I thought that was a really nice touch all into itself. So, from a story and from an acting perspective, I think this movie is really, really strong, and it's really, really good. From an overall production value, this movie looks fantastic. The cinematography in this movie is absolutely gorgeous. Sergio Leone captured the distinctness of the 1918s, of the 1920s, and the 1930s to perfection. and also the late 1960s going into the 70s, like that modern day feel, if you will. Uh, and also just like how the cinematography feels like a movie that was made in the time that it takes place in. Like Sergio Leone, this really feels like a pet project for Sergio Leone. He put his heart and soul into this movie, and it really shows on screen for pretty much everything. Uh, yeah, those are just my overall thoughts on Once Upon a Time in America. I overall think it's a really good movie. There is a lot more to cover with this, but I'm just going to give my bare bones perspective on it. Overall, it's for me a solid 8 out of 10. It is a fantastic movie. It is a classic. I think there are better gangster movies out there that are better than this movie, but in terms of its epic scope, I thought Sergio Leone landed it really well, executed it well. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for Once Upon a Time in America. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like this video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.